Okay, so if I get rich or collect a lot of stuff, am I automatically greedy?
Okay, so if you get rich, collect a lot of stuff, am I automatically greedy?
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
But it's such a good question though, because so often we just equate people who are rich with people being greedy.
Right.
Like we just think it's one and the same.
Yep.
And some of the most generous people I know are people who would be considered rich by most other people. So I don't think that being rich has to equate to being greedy. Again, I think a lot of people who are rich are very generous. The collecting of things, that's so. You mentioned like boats, I think, the question, right? And like if I'm here collecting yachts or whatever, Truett Cathy, who's the founder of Chick-fil-A, was
greedy AF. He wants all the chickens for himself.
Okay, no. So Truett Cathy, founder of Chick-fil-A, was an amazing, like he had this amazing collection of cars. So classic cars that were in movies, that kind of thing. He even had one of the Batmobiles that was in one of the original Batman movies. And so here's this man who is very wealthy, collecting all of these really pricey, high-end vehicles. And at the same time, we know that Truett was an incredible giver, that from the WhenShape Foundation, which was established out of Chick-fil-A, they fund this, they fund this foster home and do this unbelievable work with foster kids. And we also know that Chick-fil-A gives a lot of money away in scholarships for colleges and for just a whole lot of other things too. They're a generous company. Truett Cathy was a generous man with a generous family. And so I think it's one of those things. It's like, so how do you, I guess what I'm saying is like, how do you balance someone who we know is generous,
right,
with the fact of, but he also spent a lot of money collecting cars. And I think some of this it's relative to how much one makes or has. But then I think also like we just kind of have to know what's going on in someone's heart. What's interesting about Truett is like he would actually acknowledge, he would say, "This is my vice."
Oh, cars.
He would say, "This is my vice." Like he would acknowledge that, and that's such an interesting dynamic. And I don't know how I guess that's where it gets dangerous for us to start judging other people.
Okay.
With the way that they are or the way they use their money or how they spend things. Now, I do think there are people that are living an extravagant type of lifestyle that are not generous. And they probably are greedy. And so I guess a lot of it probably depends on how generous that person is as well with what they have.
Like say I had $1 billion tomorrow somehow.
Okay. Right.
And I don't want to be greedy.
Okay.
What do I do?
All right.
Is it charity? Do I have to give money to random people? Do I have to tip a lot? Do I have to pay for my family's stuff? Like, do I have to do anything? Can I just let it sit there? Like,
okay.
There's going to be a lot of pressure on you at that point. So how do you not be greedy about it?
Okay. Jesus has a couple of different interactions with people that were rich. Okay. And so someone wants to follow him, for example. He's incredibly rich, incredibly wealthy, wants to follow Jesus. And Jesus tells him to sell everything. Sell it all. Okay? Probably not what you're wanting to hear if you get $1 billion tomorrow.
Glad Jesus isn't around anymore.
Again, I said this last week. I want to say it again. We need to do a discussion on the Trinity soon. And so, oh my God. All right. Thankfully, Jesus is alive still.
See Jesus and take my money bags and run. Nope.
Okay.
I'm just kidding. Anyway, this is a real question.
This is a real question. Not that you would ever do that.
Nope.
All right. So Jesus tells this one person, go sell everything you got.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. To the other person who wants to follow him, he says, all right, listen, you need to repay everything you've took wrongfully from people.
Okay.
And so this individual,
I'm going to need a line item sheet of that.
right?
Please, Jesus.
This individual goes and repays with interest what he wrongfully took from people.
Okay.
Okay. All right. And so I think what we can conclude from that is that when individuals who do have wealth and they're following Jesus, wanting to follow Jesus, I think it's going to look different for every individual.
Okay.
Based on what's in their hearts. For the individual that was told to go give everything away, it said that he that he was so close to coming into the kingdom, but yet he walked away sad. And I get it. Maybe most of us would be sad if Jesus told us to give everything away to follow him. So I do get that. But I also think it kind of, in the gospel writer is sharing it in such a way that you get the idea, the sense of, I would have followed Jesus, but I just can't give up on my possessions. And I think that kind of is getting down to like what was going on in the heart of that person. Where this other individual, Jesus like, hey, you got to correct that which was wrong, which you did wrong. This person does it, but he's not asked to give everything away. And so Jesus, again, knowing what's in the heart of that person. And I think that's kind of what gets down to is like, what is Jesus looking at what's in the heart of the person? So he's going to ask different things of different people. So in Matthew chapter 6 and in verse 19, going through 24, Jesus says, don't store up for yourselves treasures on earth where moth and rust destroy and where thieves break in and steal. But store up for yourselves treasures in heaven where neither moth nor rust destroys and where thieves don't break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. So I think, again, it's getting back to the idea of the heart. Where is the heart? And in verse 24, Jesus says, no one can serve two masters, since either he will hate one and love the other, or he will be devoted to one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money. And I think the question is, all right, so Nate, if you get $1 billion tomorrow, is that money, are you going to, does that money now own you? In other words, are you just kind of enslaved to it, where all of life now is about this money?
I feel like for a little bit.
Okay.
Right?
Why right?
Because everyone else is going to want some from you.
Okay.
And so that's kind of like a thing hanging over your head constantly.
Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah, it would be.
So it kind of is slaving you a little.
Yeah.
Probably. Right?
Yeah. So it's definitely enslaving some of your thoughts, right? And so, in other words, man, how am I going to handle this?
Right.
How do I do this? And I think the question becomes the idea of the heart being the core of who we are, the core of our being, right? So, I think the question Jesus would be asking is, all right, so, but does it have your heart? Are you given over to it? Do you feel no need for me anymore? Are you, because you have the money and you are self-sufficient now, right? You've got everything you quote unquote need, at least on a tangible temporal level. Does Jesus kind of get moved to the side, right? I think that's what Jesus is kind of getting at here. It's like, what has a hold of your heart?
So if Truett Cathy parked one of his cars in Jesus's spot,
okay,
that's when that would have been a bad thing.
Yeah, I think
so that Jesus had nowhere to be inside the garage.
Yeah, and I think one of the things too is it's like, does Jesus have permission to have all of that?
Oh, at any point.
At any point.
Well, I have heard that it is.
Or are you kind of holding it just for you?
Right.
Yeah.
It's easier for people who gained a lot of money to gain a lot of money again.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah, if they're the ones that did it, not just inherited or whatever.
Right.
But yes.
If they worked really hard and made a bunch of money.
Correct.
If Jesus said, give it all away, it'd be like 2 years and they'd have that same amount of money again.
I mean, it's very well possible.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, there's plenty of stories of individuals that make millions,
lose everything, and then do it again. Yeah.
I mean, I know someone, and it's almost like they're I don't know them really well, but I do know them, and they go through that cycle all the time because they're like this. They're like I can't remember the name of it, but like they're like a like a heavy like entrepreneur type, and so they throw everything into everything like.
Oh, like into the next invention or whatever?
Right, and they'll make tons of money on something, and they're like, okay, well now I'm gonna go do this, and they'll lose it all, but they have enough skill set and a high level competency to go make millions again, and they'll do the exact same thing, and sometimes it works, and sometimes it and it's like they're just kind of this constant back and forth, but they can't like almost stay just doing the one thing, and so. Yeah, it's kind of yes, but you're not wrong. People generally do that. And I think the question of it is constantly, well, if that happens, or even if you're building money back up, at that point, would you have that money? In other words, would Jesus still have your heart? That's really the question.
Or that money have you?
Yeah, or that money have you?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and
so that's the answer.
Yeah, I think so. And I think you get a good point of like the difference of like working towards something versus just kind of inheriting something.
Right.
I think sometimes when we work towards something, we understand the value of it more. And so therefore we're probably not as enslaved by it as much. We know what it took to get there. If you're just handed it, you're probably not as careful with it, and it probably does own you a little bit more. Like for example,
because you don't know how to make it yourself.
Yeah, exactly. And so there's probably a fear of if I gave this all away, well, I wouldn't get it back.
Yeah.
And like the rich young ruler who's asked to give everything away, more than likely he inherited what he had. He was rich because of who his family was, and so that's why he had the money he did. And so, I think there's a concern from him, for example, when Jesus says, give everything away. And he's like, oh man, it's all my inheritance. That's everything.
Nope.
Yeah.